We're back here with another Tim Gillette show. Yeah, that's me. I know, I got to show my name, but it isn't about me. I'm going to introduce you to the coolest people on the planet. Today's guest and I go back many a years, all right? As I'm sure he'll probably tell some of the stories about when we met, and how we became close friends. Over the past few weeks, we've been able to catch up a little bit, see what each other is up to, and very shocked that each of us hasn't gone a totally different area than we thought we were going to go when we met each other 17, 18, I don't know how many years ago it was. But anyway, Rob Skiba is my guest today. And I met Rob in 2002 or 2003. I can't remember where. And when he came to Dallas, Texas, I let him crash on my couch, just like a mutual friend of ours, Brian, let me crash on his couch when I was homeless. And it's funny, because all three of us are still to this day close friends, even though we don't see each other now. We have gone off to perform and do things that God has told us to do. Somebody bring him up, Mr. Rob Skiba. How are you?
I'm good, Tim. How are you, man? Thanks for having me on.
It is good to finally get some of the people I know, like who knew me when I didn't have all this, on screen with me finally and record it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just did a quick math. It was 18 years ago.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
Like kids that weren't born yet are adults now when we met.
Yeah. What a time that was. Just real brief. I ended up going through a really painful divorce in 2002 and ended up broke, homeless, divorced, bankrupt, and living in a Dodge Stratus with everything I owned in it, ready to put a bullet in my head, when my uncle, who lived in Texas, told me about this scripture-based self-help program called the Road Adventure, which was a 3-weekend deal. And I flew back and forth from Massachusetts for parts 1 and 2. But by the time part 3 weekend came along, I couldn't stand living in Massachusetts. I was like living in a tar pit. So I packed up everything in my car. I drove down to Texas with the intention of going through part 3. And then I had no clue what I was going to do with my life after that. And that was January of 2003. I met you, I believe it was at a Bible study the following month. And I crashed on the couch in this house that you were renting. And what was it? The space shuttle blew up right over our head.
Yep. That was right about the same time. I remember that. So.
Yeah, I remember hearing it. It woke me up, and it blew up right over Allen, Texas.
Yeah. So you I don't know if you know this, but the gentleman whose house that I used to rent a room from, he about 2.5, 3 years ago, he passed away from cancer.
Oh man.
Has a wife and 2 kids, and I moved out of his house because he was getting married. And I found out 3 months after it happened, and then I called his wife real quick and talked to her. It's like, I didn't know, and he was like, him and I were roommates through like 2 or 3 houses, and the last roommate I was staying in his renting a room in his house when he got married, when he bought his own house. So yeah,
wow,
and and he was younger than me, so yeah,
terrible.
Life happens. So he's a good Christian kid, though. You know what I mean? Good Christian guy. You know what I mean? We went to 2 different churches together and stuff like that. So, he's good to see him. But how life has changed. You got remarried again, though, too, right?
I did. Yep. Let's see. I didn't stay with you that long. I ended up getting an apartment. Got my feet back on the ground. Got a job, and it was doing okay for a while there. And then the guy who hired me, his son graduated from college, and he gave him my job. Actually, it was Brian Kennedy got me that job. But then the boss gave his son my job, and so I was out of work. Now I had by that time my car broke down. I got a new car, had a new apartment. I thought, man, everything's going great. and then I lost my job, and so from March to December of 2003, I didn't have any work, but I had all the bills that come with having an apartment and a car and utilities and everything else. But I was applying for jobs that had my picture on the job description. It's like, we want Rob Skiba. And I would show up, and for whatever reason, they'd be like, you're overqualified, or you're this, you're whatever. And finally, I don't care about sales or anything like that, but I applied for a job selling cars at a dealership on 121. And I went through the whole training and everything. I was about ready to step on the lot. And it was a whole week of training. And the day I was supposed to go on the lot, the guy above the guy that hired me brought me into his office. He's a New Yorker. He's looking at my resume. He's like, "You're not going to work my lot." I'm like, "I'm not. I just went through all your training. I did really well." He goes, "I'm looking at you. You're an artist. You're an actor. You look at this." He's like, anything, one of these things pops up, and I know you're going to be out here. I want somebody here for the long haul. Mm-hmm. I said, "Yes, sir. You're probably right. Thank you." And I went home and I'm like, "Okay, God, you're withholding from me because it's not like I'm not trying here, you know." And he just kept telling me, "Well, we got to spend time together, you and I." And I'm like, "Well, then you're going to have to provide for me." And he said, "Deal." So I lived one miracle to another from March to December of 2003, got hired at East West Ministries, an international missions organization, in January of 2004. And then Sheila, who would become my bride-to-be, got hired in August the same year. And we were in the same communications department. So that's how we met. And then we got married on July 7th, 2007.
Yeah, I remember. I was at the wedding. I do remember your wedding. That was like some of the last times I really kind of hung out with you guys was your wedding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But your life has changed. All right. I'm curious though, because you're a man of faith. Mm-hmm. At any point in time, did you give up faith?
Oh boy. Well, when I came to Texas, I was in that mode. Mm-hmm. It was actually that road adventure thing that put me back together again, because I had really, I've been a Christian since I was 7 years old, grew up in a Christian family. My dad was a Baptist minister when I was a kid. So I've been exposed to Christianity my whole life. But I went through, that crucible. Actually, it started in 2000 and went right through to 2002, ending in the divorce. And at that point, I had a major crisis of faith that had to be restored. And that was largely what 2003 was all about. And, I lived in a apartment complex known as Austin Ranch, which at least at the time was like a meat market, man. I mean, there was like everybody there walked off the cover of a magazine. It looked like,
I remember it. Yeah.
There was a lot of temptation like everywhere. And I knew I had the potential to get myself into a lot of trouble. So I was like, as tempting as all of that was, I decided basically to lock myself in my apartment. And pretty much all I did was read my Bible, pray a lot, and cry a lot for most of 2003 till, put my life back together again.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what I mean? Coming with a man of faith and being growing up as a Christian, but then coming here, all right. Texas has got a lot more, Dallas anyway, has got a lot more bigger churches and more paths that you can go down as a Christian. Did you find it interesting, or did you find it easy to like choose? Okay, I'm just going to go to this church, or I'm just going to follow this ministry and work here. Or what was it? What was it? Some of your paths back then?
Well, when I first moved to Austin Ranch, that's just down the road from Prestonwood Baptist Church, which is where I met you, and a bunch of other fantastic people that, we were all a really tight family back then for like a couple of years at least. And Prestonwood, it's a 23,000 member church. Mm-hmm. And when I first drove by it, I'm like, wow, I really am in the buckle of the Bible Belt. I mean, they put a cross on a mall.
Flags over Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was just a retail outlet mall. I mean, it was so huge, like as big as, Stonebriar Mall. Mm-hmm. It looked like, and when I first went in there, I mean, there was the novelty of, wow, like this place is amazing. Right. But there were certain doctrinal positions that I started to disagree with over the course of the months and stuff, maybe a year or so that I was there. And I decided to go to Pastor Steve Collins' church, who was
another great friend of ours. Yeah.
Yeah. Steve was, he also shared the same building that the Road Adventure was in. And many times they would recommend, if you didn't have a church, that you could go to Steve's, the Harvest was the name of the church, go to his church because it met in the same building. Mm-hmm. And actually it was the day after part 3 that I had nowhere to go. And all I knew was the Road Adventure parking lot on Campbell Road. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the Road Adventure parking lot and I was sitting there. This was the Monday after part 3. And I have like no clue what I'm going to do with my life. And I look, and Steve Collins had a little office in a little strip mall there, and it was his day off, but the lights were on. So I went in there and I said, "Hey, brother, I'm kind of really lost here. Can I talk with you?" And he spent a good several hours with me on his day off. Mm-hmm. So he became a real brother and friend. And, we attended his church for a number of years. And then we just, every church, there's no perfect church, man. I mean, there's just not. And I still love Steve and everything, but they were taking things in a bit of a different direction again. And I was like, and then I eventually just settled on a house church, going to a fellowship with some friends at their house. And I actually learned more doing that in 1 year than in the 40 plus years prior, because when you have the model of one guy in the front talking and everybody else listening, you really can't challenge that. It's not like you say, hey, brother, I don't think that's right. No. You'll be politely escorted out, or maybe not so politely. So
pastor's theology sometimes tends to lean towards the people who are putting money in the offering plate.
Yeah, man. And look, when I was in international missions, I found that it was a worldwide statistic that 4% of the church finances the whole thing. So, I mean, think about that in a 23,000 member church. If there's 23,000 members and only 4% of them are financing a $2 million plus a month bill, there's some major donors there that, all they have to do is say, hey, Brother Jack, or whoever the pastor is now, you really kind of offended my wife when you were preaching on that the other day. I'd appreciate it if you don't do that again. What's he going to do? Especially if several $100,000 is coming from that one person. I mean, I just saw lots of things wrong with the standard church model, and doing the house church model. It was really cool because there were young people all the way up to elderly people, and everybody was encouraged to share whatever the curriculum we were studying, whatever the Bible verses were. And sometimes out of the mouth of babes, you'd hear like these unbelievable insights. And then you had the maturity of the people who had been, walking in the Lord for many decades, So there was a built-in checks and balances there, but also a wide variety of input that you just don't get in the standard church model. So I haven't looked back. I've been doing that, the house church model ever since. In fact, I started a virtual house church model back in 2012 using my online platform, with YouTube. And I do that every Saturday now from 2:00 to 4 p.m.
That is interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, I don't know if I've ever shared with you some of the challenges I went through with Prestonwood. I love Prestonwood. And my point where I actually leave, and it wasn't Brian Kennedy that I actually had the conversation about. It was after Brian left and had moved to the Carolinas. Was like, I thought of all the major churches in Dallas, Jack Graham is one of the most scripturally based people I know, right? And I have to agree with that still to this day. But when he said, God has given me the mission to open up branch churches, and when he stands in a pulpit and it's broadcast at another church, I couldn't get behind that. Mm-hmm. And Brian Kennedy said to me, he says, it's not that it's wrong, but it's wrong for you. And if you stay, you're only going to corrupt other people. You have to leave and go where you went. And I went with I don't know if you know a guy named John who's got Hope Fellowship up in Frisco. That's where I went for many years. I actually worked for the church for a couple of years up in Frisco, and they went to the same model. And I said, I'm sorry, John, I'm out. I can't stand behind that model. Yeah. It's just something, the way we grew up. I mean, I grew up Northeast as well, and that's it. How many times in your life have you had this, Rob, where you're going down something, man, I'm in. And then all of a sudden, maybe it was the road, maybe it was a job, and you're like, okay, no, okay, I'm not ready to do that change. And you backed off and went, time to change.
Yeah. Well, I like to consider myself quite flexible, and I regularly pray that the Holy Spirit will lead me and guide me into what the truth is, no matter what the topic is. And I have a long and well-established public track record of changing my views. Yeah. In many different topics. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong. I think, look, we've all been deceived by, one thing or another throughout our lives. And it wasn't that anybody had ill intent. They may have been deceived themselves, and they're just passing on what they had learned. But once I come to what I understand is the truth, well, I can't continue to support, the other thing. So, because, ultimately, it's just not going to be good for you or other people, because I don't know about you, but actually I think I do know about you, but myself, I can certainly speak and say that I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut when I passionately believe something, you're going to hear about it.
Well, no, I was that way when I was younger. All right. I worked in the auto industry. And if I ever believed in my jobs, if I ever believed I was right, I would fight up until the moment I was proven wrong. And then I would step back and I would walk over and apologize and shake the hands of everybody. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm sorry, I was wrong. And I remember having a supervisor who basically said to me, I disagree with the way you do things like that. And I said, no, I fully 100% was straightforward, believed that I was right. And I said, and I will always stand when I believe I was right. But when the second I realize I'm wrong, I am going to walk back and apologize to everybody that I disappointed and say I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that has always been my thing. And that's not even scriptural. That's me and my job type deal, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you've got that same characteristics in the fact that same thing. You know what I mean? If it's making a film or whatever, your spiritual beliefs, you're set in that. If I believe I'm right, I move forward until the point I realize I'm not right anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, look, if you're not passionate about something, you're doing something wrong. Like, you need to be passionate about whatever it is. And both of us know somebody named Pat Dewar. He's a dear friend and brother and mentor to me, and he always challenged me to make my passion my profession.
Yeah.
You know. And interestingly enough, I had another guy. This was back in 1997 through 99. I affectionately referred to him as Mr. Miyagi. His name was Joe Sibilia. He was an eccentric multimillionaire, bald guy, used to wear linen clothes and walk around barefoot. And he had a place in Gasoline Alley in Springfield, Massachusetts. Gasoline Alley is this nasty, just what it sounds like. It's all coal and oil and gas industry there.
Yeah.
He had this little oasis there in the middle of all of that. And I was recommended by a mutual friend to go see him when I was trying to seek investment for movie making. And so he was trying to tell me life lessons that I couldn't. I knew better. Let's put it this way. You know, here I am broke. Here he is a multimillionaire, but I know better.
Yeah.
He was trying to sow into me. He was trying to teach me something. And so he's listening to me, blah, 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 blah. He's sitting patiently in the windowsill. And like, all I can see is this bald silhouette with this light behind him. And it was almost surreal. I was like, oh, you know, and I'm going, blah, 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 blah. He goes, come with me. And he gets up and he walks outside, and I'm still talking, blah, 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 blah. And he starts picking up cigarette butts and like Coke cans and, you know, just garbage. We're walking down the street and he's picking stuff up, and I'm just still blah, 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 blah. Then I figured, well, maybe I should pick some stuff up too, you know? And so I started picking stuff up too, and I kept talking, and we get back. We walk right back to the place. He throws everything in the garbage. I throw my stuff in the garbage. He sits back in the window, and I'm sitting there looking, and he's not saying a word. And I'm like, okay, so what was that, like wax on, wax off or something? And he's like, dude, you're like trying to save the world. Why don't you start where you're at first?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like so powerful, because here's this guy who has he could live in cush life wherever he wanted to, but he's set up shop at one of the nastiest places because he's trying to clean it up, one cigarette butt at a time if he has to. But in the meantime, he's mentoring people and stuff like that. And I couldn't really receive it then. But it's interestingly enough, though, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, but the first project that I did with the ministry, which you were involved with, I brought it back to Massachusetts. I went back to Massachusetts after making that. And I just said, hey, brother, I couldn't really receive everything you were trying to tell me several years ago, but I want you to know I get it now, and I want you to know this is just a little piece of the fruit of the seed that you sowed into me, back when. And, he kept it, and he's got it in his library now as, a success story, he considers.
Mm-hmm. So. I think you gave me a copy of it, and I don't even know if I have it anymore because, then again, I had the apartment fire, which I lost a lot of stuff. So yeah,
that's
yeah.
So I got to tell this story, man. When I before I got my apartment, and while I was living in my car for a while until I met you, and then you're like, hey, stay with me. But I was praying. I'm like, God, what am I doing here? There's nothing. This place is a desert. There's nothing for me here. I'm going out to LA. I'm going to go. I'm already to like the true Hollywood story, right? Yeah. I'm living in a van down by the river.
Yeah.
It's like I'm living in a Dodge Stratus with everything I own in it. And so I'm doing interviews. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And I was headed down to, I can't even remember the guy's name now, but there was some kind of big thing dealing with Noah's Ark down in like Grand Prairie or someplace. I forget what it was now. So I got like all these McDonald's napkins and stuff with appointments. I'm making all these appointments everywhere, and I got them Post-it notes and stuff all over my car, trying to keep track of everything, right? And I'm like, man, I need a planner, some way to keep track of all this stuff, because I don't want to ditch anybody or lose an interview or something. So anyway, I'm driving down to this interview, and I was supposed to go to I think it was Kim Dawson Talent Agency after that. And the first interview, he called me and said, hey, listen, I got tied up with some stuff. Can we postpone? I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I went to the casting agency 2 hours earlier than I was supposed to be there. And I was sitting in the lobby, and I was talking with this guy. We just really hit it off. We were talking for quite a while. And then he said something to the receptionist. He got up and walked away. And then I went up and I hand the receptionist my headshot and resume and stuff. And she says, you have no idea who you were just talking to, do you? I'm like, no. She's like, when you go to the movies and you hear the preview voice guy, coming this fall, he's the guy. He did voiceover in Forrest Gump, and he like, no. She says, if you want to know somebody who literally knows everybody in Hollywood, you were just talking to him. I'm like, thank you, bye. I ran down the stairs and I caught him right before he got in his car. His name is John William Galt. I said, John, hey man. He was telling me about this thing called the Nexus Group, which was a group that he was trying to put together for local Dallas-based, filmmakers, writers, directors, producers, to do independent feature film projects together. Just a networking opportunity, And so I said, hey man, that Nexus thing you were talking about earlier, man, that sounds really amazing. Is there any chance I could, go to that? And he says, well, I can tell you're enthusiastic. You got a good look, and, I enjoy talking with you. So I tell you what, I'm starting it. So here's my card. I'll walk you into the first meeting myself. Well, I had just been praying for confirmation. I said, Father, give me 3 billboard-sized signs that I can't mistake. That is you telling me you want me here, right?
Yeah.
That was like big sign number 1. So I'm walking to my car with this business card, and I'm literally thanking God. I'm like, okay, God, that's a really cool sign number 1. Then just before I got to my car, he says, hey kid. I said, yeah. He says, if you're going to be making these appointments and stuff, you really need a planner. Like, he literally said the words that I had just said in my car a couple hours earlier. And there's only one planner that I like. It's the kind you get complimentary for businesses. Businesses give them. Yeah. And I've never seen them at like Office Max or Staples or anyway. It's the only place I've ever seen them is complimentary. And somebody has given me one of those every year since 1997. And that was literally the exact business planner that he gave me. And so I'm sitting in my car and I'm like, okay, that's just cool. All right. So that's 2003. Sometime around that time, I end up staying with you. Then I get the apartment and everything else. Then I get hired at East West Ministries about a year later. And my first assignment is Cuba. So I go down to Cuba, and I kept driving by this building every day. And I felt like the Holy Spirit was telling me, stop the car. You need to shoot this building. I didn't know why. So I just jumped out of the car and I shot it all crazy herky-jerky for some reason. And the last shot I got was a dude in a watchtower with an AK-47 turning towards me. I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. So we jump in the car and take off. Well, a day or two later, I get to Havana, and I interview this older gentleman, probably in his 60s, I guess, who tells me the story about how he was put in prison for several years for his faith. They kicked the door open to his house and psychologically tortured him, took him away. And, they would like take him out in the field with his friends, put blindfolds on him and fire rounds off into the air, making them think their friends were killed, and then separating them and, making them move huge piles of rock from one end of the field to the other and then back again. And just horrible stories that he was telling me that he went through. And so when I got back to Dallas, I'm thinking to myself, man, I got to reenact this somehow. I need to tell his story, but I need to tell it visually. I need to let him tell the story in the video through the interview, but I need to depict it, And so I'm running in the treadmill at my gym at Austin Ranch, and they were building phase 3 of the apartment complex. And I look back there, and there's this huge field with big piles of rock back there. And I'm thinking, wow, that'd be a good location.
Yeah.
So then I'm training at the Road Adventure, and this Hispanic guy comes through, and he's in my group, and I work with him all weekend. And after it's over, I said, hey man, I'm thinking about shooting this documentary, and I need some guys to play Cubans. Would you be interested? He's a Hispanic guy. And he's like, oh yeah, man, I'd love to. I get my brother and a few other people. I'm like, cool. So now I had actors in location, but I needed props. I needed Russian outfits and guns and stuff. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I was thinking maybe I'll buy squirt guns and paint them black or something for pistols or whatever. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then I remembered that guy, John William Galt. And I'm like, well, if anybody would know where I could get stuff, he would. So I couldn't figure out where John was, his information was, until I looked at my tax folder from the previous year and saw the planner and his card. So I called him up, and he's like, oh yeah, come on over, dude. So I go over to his house, and he says, open the garage. I open the garage, and he's got like AK-47s, rocket launchers, pistols, Russian. He was gonna do a war movie, an independent war movie, and he had all the props and gear, but the financing fell through, so he never did anything. But he had all the stuff. He's like, yeah, take whatever you want. Well, the kicker is is that, you know, when you took me in and everything, we became friends and everything like that. I'm looking at you one day, and I'm thinking about the guy that I had interviewed in Havana. I'm like, man, Tim really does look like this guy. And so I cast you as a younger version of that individual that I interviewed in Havana. And when I finally showed the video at a missionary conference, that guy's daughter was at the conference, and she flipped out because you look so much like her dad. She was like, how did you get footage of my father, you know, in prison in Cuba? Like, that's how much you look like him. I'll put it up on the screen here. This is some actually screen captures from the shoot. This is me right here instructing the actors, you know, with the AK-47, and I did a lot of special effects. I only had like 3 or 4 guys, but I used special effects to replicate people to make, you know, look like there are more and more people. And so we're reenacting the stuff here, moving the rocks and all that. And there you are, in the pit, you know, left in a pit. And for the guy's safety, I blurred him out, except for his eyes. And I think people can tell enough just by looking at the eyes that they're very, very similar. I can't depict him because it could be a security risk for him, especially with what's going on in Cuba right now. Yeah. But I think if you just look at the eyes right there, you really are a dead ringer for that guy, you know, 40 years, you know, prior or whatever, however long ago it was. So, you know, the 3 things that I asked God, what the heck am I doing in Texas for, you know, I asked for 3 confirmations, actually made my first mini movie. It was very short, but made my first movie possible. So I haven't looked back since. You know, it's been an amazing journey.
It's interesting because, you know what I mean? So many things have been connected around that, you know, in my world, first of all, is John's sons. His one son bought my motorcycle, and then his other son bought it from him.
John Galt.
My custom chopper that I built when I was broke, and I'm like, okay, I got to build something to get back forth to work. So I bought this thing wrecked and rebuilt it. Nice. And then when my life and business got better, I went and bought a brand new Harley, and then I sold it. And it was his one son. I can't remember which one it was, but the younger son ended up having it while he was going to college. And all right, and I mean, he loved it. It's like I built this thing out of a wreck, and you remember that motorcycle because I got it. And it wasn't even running right. Didn't have the brakes running right. And our friend Faith is like, you got a motorcycle, you got to go on my run. And I'm like, I didn't want to. And that was the only motorcycle wreck I ever had was on that run.
I remember that. You went off the edge there.
Yep. I have 1,000,000 miles on 2 wheels, and that's the only accident I ever had. Thank God.
Wow.
I was just very fortunate. And it's like, there's so many things, like I said, connecting around that. And now that motorcycle is owned by, well, I don't know if his youngest son still owns it, but he kept it because he loved it. It was a nice, cool running chopper, right?
It's a small world, man. It's such a small world.
And then, like, you know, acting, you know, I don't know if you know this, but like I was on actor Dean Cain's podcast. And I'm friends with Dean through an event I worked with a lot. Nice. And actor Dean Cain said to me in 2016 when I was turning 50, I'm like, you know what I mean? I said, I've never thought about acting. He said, he gave me a challenge. He says, I want to see you act in something. I'm like, I already did once. And he's like, you know, you can still do it. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not interested, right? But he tells everybody I'm an actor. I'm like, I'm not an actor. But I'm like, Dean Cain is another connection in my world that most people are like, well, how the heck did you connect with Dean Cain, right? But you know what I mean? It's through connections with you that got me to go out and take connections with other places. And the same thing in your world, I'm sure. You know what I mean? There's people you now know that we can circle it back and come around. Oh, my God. It's, you know, connections we both had when we first came to Dallas.
Networking is what it's all about, man.
And I do know that when you actually came here, you and I were sitting down someplace, and you said, well, I came from Massachusetts. I got divorced. I'm on my way to California. And I said to you, no, you aren't.
No, you're not.
And I remember telling my dad that story. And my dad, I didn't even get to the point where I said, no, you're not. And my dad said, so did you tell him he's not going? Because my dad's like, I've seen this story before. I know where it goes. You're staying in Texas. And it's funny because like my brother who lived here at the time lives in New Zealand now. And like I live here and my mom lives here. You know what I mean? Like I'm in Texas to stay. I'm not leaving Texas, even though I work in California. Well, not anymore, not since the pandemic, but before I was out there 6, 7, 8 times, you know what I mean, in a 3-month period of time, you know, and now I'm here in Dallas, but I want to live in Dallas. And like my close friend now and my business coach moved from Southern California here to Texas. And his story was he's from New York, right? When you look at connections in your world, New York, he went to school at Oswego State University. The month he graduated, the following month, the church that I went to, had their National Youth Conference at that college. I stayed in the dorm that he was in his sophomore year. We never met each other until 2011.
Nice.
All right. But it's even more to it. It's like when you look at uniqueness. He worked for Air Supply and Guns N' Roses. I was probably at a concert 2 or 3 times in the early 90s where he was probably standing less than 100 yards from me backstage. And now we're really close friends. Think about that in concept, right? Like our worlds changed so drastically and the connections we made. And like, you know, you were talking about faith earlier and like, would you ever picture in 2003 that this is where we'd be now?
No,
I didn't.
I could barely see 6 inches in front of my face as far as my future goes, you know. And it's funny because you mentioned our friend Faith, and that's God's sense of humor. Because at a time when I had pretty much lost my faith in God's sense of humor, he introduced one of the first people I met here was a woman named Faith, and you know, she's one of these people that gets in your face, you know, and you know, she's an encourager, you know, but she doesn't take any crap. You know, but she was, you know, huge and among other people like yourself and, you know, Victor and Barry and many other people that we had in our lives back then that, you know, really, really helped us out. But it was funny because when I went through the program and people were like, yeah, you're changing your zip code, but it's not going to be California. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's nothing for me here in Texas. Well, here I am 18 years later, still here. And, you know, frankly, you know, both of us agreed not to get political here, but if I had to be anywhere in the country right now, I'm glad I'm in Texas.
I'll take Texas over any of them if we play the political game. But no, it's not just that. It's it's everything I love about Texas. Other than that, you know, like my wife grew up in the Panhandle, and like Labor Day weekend, we're going to the Panhandle. Everybody else is like, why are you going to Amarillo? There's fun things we know to do in Amarillo because she grew up there. You know, I love Texas, and I love I've driven every highway in it on a motorcycle. I did a road trip one time on my motorcycle in Texas, 7 days and 3,500 miles, and never once left the state.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a country, man. Texas is huge.
Anyway, and now you know you met Sheila. What year did you meet Sheila? Was it 5 or 7? 6.
2004. I got hired in January of 2004, and she got hired in August the same year. That's where we met at the ministry.
As I remember, one year, I think it was 2005 when I went to work for Starbucks. That like Christmas Day, like you know, we came back to I think it was her apartment, and we all hung out that night and played games. I remember that.
Yeah, was that her apartment, or I thought that was Christy? I don't remember. Maybe it was. I don't. But yeah, I do remember the party. That was that one party.
It wasn't really a party. It was like you guys came down because I was working Christmas Day because I was like, well, I'm single. All right, I have next to no money. I might as well work Christmas Day and take the tips at Starbucks because I don't have any money anyway. So, and, you know, and it's just interesting how the world changed, and like you know that was a unique hangout for us. But what are some of the projects now? Let me twist this a little bit. What are some of the projects now that you're working on, and has your world transformed in the last couple of years?
Yeah, man. Well, I have been working on, as you can see, my little, where's my I gotta turn this around here. My logo right here. That's based on a whole lot of fact-based fiction. Well, the series is meant to be fact-based fiction. I've done a ton of research over the decades of my life, and much of it I have turned into books and DVDs that I have been privileged to travel the world, literally all over the world, talking about this stuff at conferences. In fact, I just got back from a conference this weekend talking about this stuff, and it's great. We reach a few thousand people maybe, and on YouTube, maybe 1 million or 2, on YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that. But I'm not reaching the world, 7.5 billion people or 300 million in the country, doing it the way I'm doing it. So I have for a long time been trying to figure out how can I get this information out to more people.
Yeah.
And I came to believe that the best way to do that is through a really cool TV show. And one of the reasons for that is because, especially with the genre of science fiction, people go into it suspending their disbelief. So if I'm presenting facts and history, you're open to disagreeing with me. You're like, well, I don't think so. I don't agree with you, blah, blah, blah. But if it's packaged in science fiction, nobody cares. In fact, they're more open to believing because they're already suspended their disbelief. I mean, people get married in Klingon, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And I know I have been to the Star Trek conventions. I'm one of those geeks that actually, I have the Spock ears. I've geeked out on the Star Trek conventions before. People, especially in the sci-fi and fantasy genres, they really get into it, and not just cosplay, but where you have fan-based wiki pages and lots of different. Just go on YouTube and look up Star Wars. Just type in Star Wars, and you'll see about 1 billion content producers out there that all they do is comment on the Star Wars universe, and speculate and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, well, that's the better way to do it, because if I could get people talking about the content the same way they do with all this other stuff, they're going to learn a lot more that way, and more people will be exposed to it than if I just keep doing what I've been doing. And another thing that got me inspired to do this was when I first got my apartment right after I moved out of your place there. I didn't have any furniture or anything. I got a futon, and then I eventually got a 19-inch color TV with a DVD player in it.
Yeah.
My sister sent me season 1 box set of the X-Files. Now, I had never seen X-Files before because back in the day when you had to watch it at 8 p.m. Thursday or whatever the time slot was, for X-Files, I was never around to watch it. And all my friends are like, dude, this is you. This is right up your alley, man. Like, how come you're not watching this show? Like, you're going to love the show. I'm like, I know. I just, whatever. I could never catch it. Well, anyway, my sister sent me season 1. Now, if you watch it that way, as opposed to week and season to season, episodic television the way it used to be, binge watching on a DVD, you notice patterns you probably would have missed doing it the other way. And one of the patterns I learned was that you always had the weird freaky thing happen, then the opening title credits, and then Act 1. And there was usually a 5-minute exposition piece somewhere in Act 1 where Fox Mulder would say, yeah, such and such a weird thing happened in Podunk Town, New Jersey in 1974. Well, if you would Google the keywords and whatever his exposition piece was, not always, but more often than not, you'll find the real life true story that the fictional episodes were based on. And so that got me really excited, because not only did I enjoy watching the show for the entertainment value, but I'm a researcher and I enjoy digging. And so when I would find the real life story that the fiction stuff was based on, it would send me on all kinds of rabbit trails.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so I've structured Seed the same way. And one of the reasons I call it Seed is because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm planting seeds. In the film industry, they call them Easter eggs, where the filmmakers intentionally hide things for the audience to go find, and, the real nerds will frame by frame go through stuff, and you're like, hey, did you see that? Like, I just watched Raiders of the Lost Ark the other day, and there's actually a really cool Easter egg in the scene where he's in the Well of Souls, and he and Sala are picking up the Ark when they first get it, and they're, the room with all the snakes in it. And they're walking by a wall that has Egyptian hieroglyphs on it. But if you look real careful, I think it's right by his left shoulder, I think, there's a hieroglyph of R2-D2 and C-3PO. embedded in there. That's an Easter egg, right? That's the filmmaker. This case, Spielberg's giving a nod to his friend George Lucas there, right? Mm-hmm. So, but that's the fun of it, is where you can, tell compelling stories, but also hide stuff intentionally for the audience to go find. Mm-hmm. And so I don't call them Easter eggs. In my case, I call them seeds. There are seeds in seed that I'm intentionally hiding there for you, that hopefully, when you pick up on them, it'll drive you into my extended research, elsewhere. And not just my research. There's a lot of other people that I've researched myself. Mm-hmm. That, in fact, there's several guys, two guys in particular, Dr. Judd Burton and Dr. Aaron Judkins are two good friends of mine. They are Christian archaeologists, the Christian Indiana Jones guys that have done a lot of really cool stuff and have a lot of great research. And so I have actually written them into seed as themselves. They are actually in the story as themselves, So these are the kinds of things that, as the audience, becomes a little bit more savvy, they'll be like, "Oh, Aaron Judkins or Judd Burton. Wow, these are real guys." And then they'll go Google that and find all their research. So,
why don't you do it like Spaceballs, to where they go, so where's this? This is now? When is then? This is now?
Yeah. So, but this is a huge endeavor. And this is not cheap. It's extremely expensive. And to stay on par with anything else, comparable genre out there, we've got a $3 to $4 million per episode budget. And when you consider shows like The Mandalorian that are really hot right now, and other shows, that has about a $6 to $15 million budget. Mm-hmm. So, the stuff's it's not cheap. But the difference in the world is they understand, and the reason why they have no problem making a movie like Thor or Clash of the Titans or Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, 3 movies that all have the exact same theme you and I believe in: Son of God saves the world. Problem is, it's the wrong son of the wrong God.
Yeah.
Son of Odin, son of Zeus, son of Poseidon.
Yeah.
But they have no problem financing $150 million for a movie about the Son of God saves the world, because they know that $1 equals one person they're going to reach. Yeah. So this is what I'm trying to get Christians to understand, is like, look, we need to have the same attitude. If we actually want to reach the world, it costs money to reach the world.
It does.
And that's the bottom line. So, but I've held it out, held my hand open, and he put it in my head to do it. So he's going to have to make it, happen. And I believe I've had enough confirmation over the years to show me that he's got that covered too. So I wait patiently for the provision.
Well, I know, you and I were talking today. What was it? Is it the move or filming of is it the Chosen or no?
Chosen, yeah, that was.
That's Daryl Eves. Do you know Daryl?
That name sounds really familiar to me.
Well, I knew him when he ran Vid Summit out in California because he's in the video space where I'm in, right? Mm. But I was shocked to find out he was behind it. I was like, whoa! I think I'm friends with him on Facebook. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know him personally like I know you, but I know of him, and he probably knows of me. But yeah.
Actually, the model that The Chosen has followed is the exact model that I've been trying to do since 2009. The reason why they were able to get it quicker than I've been able to do is because they partnered with VidAngel, which is like a sort of a Christian Netflix kind of thing that already has millions of subscribers. So, they were able to pretty quickly raise $10 million from about, I think it was like 16,000 people or something like that.
And it's funny you talk about raising money for things. Last night, I was actually on a call with a gentleman who my coach put together for us to watch. This gentleman is blind, but if you watch him staring at the camera, you don't know he's blind.
Wow.
Was born with sight, lost his sight. He is Tony Robbins' #1 salesperson, and Tony Robbins doesn't pay salespeople.
Wow.
He runs charity events, and his whole message last night was from high to yes. How to meet somebody and get a yes out of them. Hmm. He runs charity events to raise money, and on average, raises $2.5 million per charity event.
Wow.
And the average charity event has 60 people at it. Mm-hmm. Imagine 60 people raising $2 million.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to host those as well when I was part of my job. I used to joke about it, but it's really kind of true. My job at East West Ministries as a multimedia director there was to make movies or, videos that would make people cry and give money.
Yes.
That was essentially my mandate, was to go into the foreign mission field, document what's happening there, put it together in an emotional piece that would tug on people's heartstrings. And same thing, we'd have a few dozen people, maybe 100 people, but they were all people of means.
Yeah.
And they'd raise millions of dollars every year to continue the ministry and do what they do. It's harder to sell. I mean, it's easy to sell that because you're talking about orphans and all kinds of stuff. It's a bit of an educational curve to show why
how a film gets you there. Yeah.
Well, media is just important. I mean, if you look at just look at 2020 and 2021, if you want to understand the impact of media on culture, enough said, right?
Yeah.
But Christians have largely abdicated their positions of influence in media. And if we want to be culturally relevant in any measure, we've got to change that. So, that's sort of the trumpet call that I'm heralding right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and one thing you kind of alluded a little bit on this. It's a question I always ask my guests, Rob, as we get closer to the end here. When I was younger, I was like 21, 22 years old. I worked at a gas station in Tewksbury, Massachusetts as a part-time job. And my boss, his name was Frank. I don't even know his last name, or I can't remember it now. But Frank gave me advice on the job that turned out to be life advice. And that was, I was having a hard time running my shift. And he says, Tim, I want you to run your shift like you own this business. Caused me to take ownership of everything I do in my life, good or bad. Did someone give you a life advice that maybe started out as just, hey, how to finish the job? I know you kind of alluded a little bit on the gentleman you talked about. Yeah, but maybe anybody else.
Yeah, I would say that it's what Pat Dewar said to me. Work hard at making your passion your profession. And the cool thing about that is all of us, especially if you grew up, in the church and Christianity, and you've been a believer for a number of years, we've all have been given spiritual gifts. And those gifts I've found line up with let's say the mountains of influence in our culture, everything from government to media to family education, religion, all kinds of stuff. The gifts line up with them. And so if you can harness the gifting that you already have and plug it in to the mind molders of society, that fit with them, how cool would that be? Because this is called co-laboring with God, where he has given you gifts so that he can work through you to accomplish his will through your passion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how fulfilling is that, right?
So, do you remember when I went through the road, what my spiritual gift was that they said I was very high in?
I don't remember, but I was going to guess service.
No.
But
when I told you, you were like, yes, I saw. And I'm like, oh my God. Huh. They told me prophecy.
Oh, yeah.
And you at the time you went, I so see that. And I thought prophecy like Samuel prophesying. No, when they explained it to me, and you understood it because you studied it.
Right.
And you explained it like, yeah, Tim, here, right here. It's as plain to put prophecy right. It's as plain as black and white to me, Tim, that's why you are that way.
Right. Yeah. The challenge for you is because a prophet does see so black and white, is to be able to wrap the gauze of love around the hammer of truth, so to speak, so that you can deliver that truth in love. And, in the time that I've known you, you've been very good at that. I mean, you've been a dear brother to me since day one. So, that's a powerful, massively powerful, hugely powerful gift to have the compassion and the love and the black and white ability to see truth from lies. So that's awesome, bro.
And I won't, and we'll talk off screen about some of the lies I see in our world right now. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, all right. It has been great having you on the show. I know we've gone a little long today, but I want to make sure people can connect with you. All right. Maybe check out some of the projects you got going on. Best website that they can reach you at when they can take this to the next level. And what do you got there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my primary website is robschannel.com. Robschannel.com is really kind of a hub that will take you to everywhere else. These are a bunch of other websites that you can go to there. But I do have a special going. If you go to robskiba.com, robskiba.com has a /list, robskiba.com/list. You could get on my email list. And if you do, you get a free PDF of my book, Babylon Rising, which was the first book that I have written in a series of books that later became Amazon bestsellers. So you can get a free PDF by signing up there. And that will help you to stay connected with me if and when other avenues start to fall apart. I mean, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells these days with censorship on YouTube and stuff like that. So, but yeah, robschannel.com is the primary, and robskiba.com /list if you want to get the free PDF.
Cool. Well, Rob, as I said, it's been a joy having you here. But before you go, I got my little 9-question this or that game we've got to play.
Okay.
I've seen Sammy Hagar do it on TV, and I thought I'm cooler than Sammy. So, as we all know, how big of a Van Halen fan I am. Anyway,
and you can't drive 55, so.
And I cannot. Oh, trust me. You do. This is another story. Some of the time, my mom and I were talking because my brother Nathan and I used to race on where the tollway is from like Parker Road to Legacy. Now it's like hugely busy, but 2001, 2, and 3, it was dead, and we used to race cars up there at night. And I took my friend's Lexus. I had my friend's Lexus at 160 on that. And he had a Ferrari. He never got over 130. And he said, I got my Ferrari up to 130. I'm like, dude, I had your Lexus at 160. Catch up. 9 questions, this or that. Let's end this thing on a fun note. Number 1, I think I know the answer, but I think, you hinted it might be different. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Boy, that is a tough one. Star Wars.
Yeah. I knew because I knew your story you're going to choose Star Wars, but I heard you mention Trek this time. And I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, I love them both for different reasons, but Star Wars had a profound impact on my life at age 7. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, Star Wars.
So let's go to comedy TV shows and pick which one was better, MASH or Cheers.
Wow, it's funny you should say that. I'm actually binge watching Cheers right now. I remember enjoying MASH, but we are just about done season 10 right now. Sheila and I have been binge watching Cheers. And I'll tell you, Cliff Clavin, there was an episode the other day that I watched where he was getting shock therapy.
Yeah.
I laughed, even just thinking about it. I laughed so hard. I kept rewinding it. I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard.
It is. I mean, they were both funny shows. My wife and I got caught up in Big Bang Theory, but oh my God, there's like political connotations to that, or not really political, but like spiritual connotations that are just so off there. But it's just so funny of a show. That you got to watch it sometime. But yeah, my wife and I got hooked on that. And the other comedy, the most recent, was the Parks and Recreation. We have that one still saved on a DVR. We go back and watch them every now and then. Yeah.
Our other go-tos are Everybody Loves Raymond and Chuck. We really enjoy both of their shows.
Next one here, right? Riding in the car nowadays. Are you someone who listens to music or a podcast?
Wow, I'm an old guy now listening to podcasts. Can you believe that? No. Like, that's crazy. I never in a million years thought that would be me, because I'm an 80s music junkie. Yeah, I'm listening to podcasts more often than music these days.
Yeah, well, now I've seen so many of these artists because they're all older now. It's like, I seen Eddie Money I met Eddie Money probably about a year before he died. So it's like, all these people that I loved as a kid, I met them in person now that they're older, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But podcasts, especially during the pandemic, tweaked me. And I like Mike Rowe's podcast, The Way I Heard It, is like huge. I listen to it in the car every day. So yeah, it's just interesting how things change.
Yeah.
Next one, food products, hamburger or taco?
Hamburger, although these days I'm not eating much meat anymore, but I love hamburgers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've gone vegan, I tell people all the time, I've been around the country to have vegan tacos from someplace. And I'm going to tell you, if I'm going to eat vegan tacos are the bomb, man.
Yeah, the Beyond Beef burger is actually quite good. They sell it.
I heard it's good. I looked at it, and I look at all the stuff that's in it, and I just that's one of Tim's black and whites. I'm like, I want real food.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm vegan. I would eat vegan as in I would eat the lettuce and the mushrooms.
I'm pescatarian, I think is what I am, because I still eat fish.
Yeah, well, yeah, we went paleo for a while, right? Where it was, it was like kind of like the caveman type thing, where it was really, meat, but like it was whole foods is the main thing we went to. We only eat organic and whole foods.
Good for you.
All right, yeah, we don't go anything artificial. So, and that's how I went. My next one here, I wasn't sure which way to go, because I usually ask this next one in a drink capacity, and I usually ask like beer or wine, but I don't even know if you drink it at all. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll drink casually. If it's beer, I drink Corona, so it's kind of a lightweight guy. I like mixed drinks, though.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't had you over to my house here, right? But in my office, right over there, is a moonshine bar. And everybody laughs at me that I have a moonshine bar in my house, because I love moonshine. But anyway, but yeah, I usually the other one I usually switch off from that. as I ask, like, coffee or tea. And I know you don't drink coffee.
I don't do either, actually.
And then I was like, so I was throwing an extra down there just in case today. And I'm like, just in case he doesn't go, I put Coke or Pepsi. I'm like, wait, do you even drink soft drinks?
I don't either. Yeah, my mom always said it was because I've never liked warm drinks.
Yeah.
And she's like, I didn't even like breast milk unless it was refrigerated.
Wow.
Like I don't really care for warm drinks, period. I kind of always been that way.
Yeah, it's like I kind of tried to cut out. I still like soda, but very little of it now. I make my own green iced tea every day. Yeah, and it's like I've switched so much into what I holistically goes into my body as opposed to junk. Yeah,
good for you.
Next one here I got. Well, speaking of junk, if you're going to the movies, popcorn or candy?
Popcorn.
Yeah,
I still love movie popcorn.
Yes. Yeah, tons of it. We eat,
probably the worst thing for you, but man, I love it.
My next one here is a little bit, for you as in what you do. Would you rather be behind the camera operating it or in front of the camera acting?
In my younger years, I would rather be in front of it, but now I really, really enjoy the creative process of being behind it and working with actors. And I think actors enjoy working with me because I have been an actor. So, for many years, I started doing theater in 1987 and did that all through the 90s, well into the 2000s. So I understand the acting world, but I really enjoy directing as an actor's director,
Yeah. Interesting. So, and then my last two are the controversial questions that I ask everybody. And the next one is the toilet paper at your house. Does it go over the wall or under?
Over, man. Over. It's complete heresy to do it. It doesn't even make sense to do it the other way.
So wait a minute. No. This is the difference between you and me.
Over, dude. Over.
We have 2 bathrooms. All right. Downstairs is the one with our bedroom. That's the one that's part of the house. And up here behind me here is the office bathroom. It's the only room in the house we didn't renovate was the office bathroom. It's still the way it was when we bought this place. And downstairs she has it on the roll going over. Upstairs it's sitting on the back of the toilet.
We have 3 bathrooms here in our house. And somebody told us, the key to a happy marriage is separate bathrooms. and I think that's true. Sheila doesn't really care. I don't think that she has a preference. She just puts it on however. I don't think it matters to her. But inevitably she was always putting it backwards, and I'm like, So
No, my wife is the one who has the set ways, and me, I'm like, I don't care. I'll set it. I'll set the roll right on top of the old roll and leave it that way. So, my last one, and this is an interesting one that I thought I want to see how you would react to this one. I always ask this one: boxers or briefs?
Boxers, dude.
Yeah. Have you tried boxer briefs, dude?
Well, actually, yeah. That's what I have now.
Yeah, that's what like I went to boxer briefs, man. They're just like
way better.
Yeah, and the fabric they make them out of is just much more comfortable.
Yeah, I used to be a tighty whitey guy, and I didn't know what I was missing until I made the switch. I'm like, oh yeah, much better this way.
Well, I was a tighty whitey guy until my grandmother passed away in 2005. Because up until then, my single years. Well, what do you want for Christmas? She'd say to me every year. I said, socks and underwear, Grandma. And I got them from her every year, and she would just go buy tighty whities and give them to me. And I was happy with that gift because that was an expense I didn't have to buy every year.
Right. Yeah. Those are fun questions, man.
Yeah. So I thought I have a little fun with the end of it, but one more time, I want you to repeat the website so they can come find you, take this relationship to the next level.
Right on, man. robschannel.com is the primary website. It's a hub that will take you to the other ones, including my Seed the Series website if people are interested in checking that site out and learn more about the TV show and everything I'm trying to do there. And if you'd like to get on my email list, go to robskiba.com/list. Sign up there and you get a free PDF of my first book, Babylon Rising.
Cool. So, Rob, I want to thank you for coming in, being part of our show today, taking time out of your schedule and sharing with my audience. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun. Need to get you on my show too, man.
Yeah, I promise you, we're going to do it. So
do it.
Before we go, I want to thank you, all of you guys who've been listening in. First of all, I want to thank Robert. Robert, good to see you back here. I've seen he left quite a few comments on here today. So a big X-Files fan. Ice-T, Robert. Robert, I'm an Ice-T guy. You've seen me on too many shows, but hey, every one of you guys, I thank you for being part of the show and watching it. Be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel. All right. The link is up above, as well as where you get your podcast. I'm Tim Gillette with The Tim Gillette Show, and I'll be back real soon with another guest. In the meantime, guys, have a great day.